science is settled. We know the planet is getting hotter. 2016 was the hottest year on historical record and the third consecutive record-breaking year. The politics is settled. In 2015, more countries came together to sign the Paris Climate Agreement than for any other cause in the history of humankind. And that is reason to hope. But it is not enough. The window for action is narrow. The impacts of climate change are already being felt. We all need to join the effort to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to the harsher world they are creating. This is no small challenge. What if we focus on how many jobs, economic growth, and prosperity climate action will create? What if businesses, entrepreneurs, technology leaders, futurists, and youth are all mobilized and inspired to create, design, and implement the solutions needed? What if, at the heart of the hydrocarbon industry, the next generation of sustainable future industries is created? These are the questions to be asked during Climate in Action at the World Government Summit. This is what we want to answer together with you, the entrepreneurs, the technology leaders, the futurists, the youth. Welcome to Climate in Action. The time to act is now.
In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, ladies and gentlemen, God's peace be upon you. We have just watched the video that was overviewing the consequences of climate change. However, when we think about the challenges arising from climate change, as well as the solutions, we always think about, of course, rationalizing the use of energy to maintain energy and to reduce our use of water, in addition to using electronic cars or using our cars less. But I wish to raise an important question. Which is more exciting, this electrical car or this drip irrigation system? Of course, many would say the electrical car. We meet here today in order to assert that we need the same kind of innovation and ingenuity in food and agriculture as we have had in many other fields, such as, for example, smartphones, personal transportation, and clean energy. Agriculture is one of the most vulnerable economic sectors to climate change. And today, we are witnessing the impacts of such consequences. Food prices are getting higher. Some places around the world go through years of drought, and that, of course, could stretch for years, and then for hours, and then receive a year's worth of rain in few hours, which would definitely, as a consequence, hold prejudice to crops and would completely kill a farmer's livelihood. And we have already been seeing the first climate refugees, farmers who are leaving rural areas for the cities. At the same time, increasing population growth means that by 2050, we will need 60% more food than we consume today. We definitely need a food revolution. We need, of course, quantum leaps in terms of agriculture and food, the same way we have had in energy revolution. This is why allow me to share with you three main axes on which we can focus in this forum. The first being food waste. The world is actually wasting 1/3 of all the food we produce, which is equivalent to $2.6 trillion, 2.6 trillion US dollars, which is, of course, 4 billion problem in the UAE. And we need, of course, energy efficiency. This is why we need, of course, food efficiency. In the same way that we need energy efficiency, we need food efficiency. The second axis is technology and innovation. The persons or for those who may not think drip irrigation is exciting, we will be, of course, hosting great speakers who will show us some breakthrough technologies that are aimed at increasing food efficiency, such as, for example, production that will produce food with 99% less water. Of course, those who wanted to, biologists who want to create milk and steak without cows, or to improve the food growth efficiency here on Earth. As you can see at the Museum of the Future exhibition on the sidelines of the World Government Summit, we will be imagining a future where we'll have car parks containing robotic farms that manage themselves in order to provide fresh and local food. The third and last axis is actually youth and raising awareness. We need, of course, to educate ourselves about the way we grow and consume food. We need as well to reimagine the industry in a way that inspires a new generation of farmers and food entrepreneurs. Today, of course, we'll be hosting many great speakers who will rethink with us the way food industry will be developed. Of course, food is a huge topic, and there are things that we haven't mentioned yet, like, for example, trade and the impact of the same on climate change, or the impact of climate change on oceans and on fisheries. However, in order to bring our forces together, we have to think about the way to make a difference. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have His Excellency Tshering Tobgay, Prime Minister of Bhutan, a true world leader in climate change and sustainability, and Mrs. Silva, FAO Director General, and Mrs. Patricia Espinosa, UNFCCC Executive Secretary, who will tell us how we take the thoughts here to the global level. Distinguished guests, join me in welcoming them to the stage, and welcome to the first annual Climate in Action. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. Please. Please, Excellency. Please. Excellencies, welcome to the stage. I want to start with the Prime Minister, Tobgay. Prime Minister, your country is one of the most unique when it comes to climate change. Not only you are carbon neutral, you are carbon negative. More than that, you have recognized climate change and agriculture as a core part of your country's happiness strategy. What are Bhutan's strategy to address this challenge when it comes to impact of climate change to food security?
Our strategies to fight climate change. Well, first, we've been very fortunate in Bhutan, Excellency Dr.Thani. We've been fortunate because our forefathers have bequeathed to us very good environment. Our forest cover is 72% of our whole country. And then we've been fortunate because of enlightened leaders. Our kings have protected our forests. And not just the trees in the forest, but our mountains, our rivers are pristine, our forests are teeming with wildlife. And more than half our country is protected as national parks, nature reserves, wildlife sanctuaries. All those different parks are interconnected with biological corridors. So what this means is birds, animals can roam throughout the country. So our environment is indeed rich, but it is also pristine. Now, being pristine means we don't know what our forests, the secrets that some of our forests have, be it medicinal or new species of insects and plants and animals. And this is why it's very, very important that we protect them. Within Bhutan, we have a myriad of strategies to protect our forests, including mitigation and adaptation and helping the people who live in the forest live more sustainable lifestyles. But our primary strategy is to collaborate with the world. Environment is a global issue. Environment is a growing global problem. Environment and climate change is a problem that only the globe can, world together can solve if we work together. And in this context, we've launched a program called Bhutan for Life. And Bhutan for Life is basically a transition fund created to help conserve our protected areas. This is a fund that we will use over 15 years, and half the fund is an endowment by the Royal Government of Bhutan, and we look for partners from outside, individual partners, corporations, NGOs, multilateral partners, to work together to protect our protected areas, our forests. The idea is that if we succeed, and we must succeed, when we succeed, we are at least a role model, a pilot for the rest of the world, and we would give a basis for other countries and other institutions to collaborate to look after their own forests.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I'm sure there will be many governments would like to collaborate with Bhutan.
Thank you very much.
Your Excellency De Silva, you're the head of the most important international organization when it comes to food. What are the changes we need to do to promote agriculture in order to address climate change?
Minister Thani, first of all, congratulations for this event and to bring in this issue of what we need to do, let's say, to adapt to the impact of climate change. I will start to saying that it's not only agriculture. We need to change the whole food system. It's a different environment, so we need to change the way we produce to the way we eat food. In the production side, the most important is to become more efficient in the use of natural resources. I'll give you an example that you know very well. Agriculture uses 70% of the fresh water available. And there is more and more competition between agriculture use and human use, especially arid areas. So we need to be more efficient in the use of water, land, and other natural resources. But we need also to change our, let's say, consumer habits. We need to waste less food. 1/3 of the food that we produce nowadays is thrown out, wasted. We need to change our storage capacity, and we need to diversify the production the way that we need to transport less product in far distance. So production and consumption locally will be one of the main targets for the future, to reduce the impact of greenhouse gas emission of transports. All these imply a big change in the food system. It's not only agriculture. Agriculture is important. We need to change, no doubt. But you need to change also, you consumers that are listening to me, the way you use the food.
Thank you, Excellency. Excellency Espinosa, we signed Paris Agreement and came into force quicker than any other international organization agreements. You represent the organization that's in charge of making sure it's implemented. The linkage between climate change and food security in the new agreement.
Well, first of all, I want to underline, take this opportunity to underline the importance of the Paris Agreement, an agreement that is almost universal, that has entered into force in a record time, less than 1 year. As of today, which is just a bit more than 1 year since it was adopted, we have 129 ratifications. That gives a very clear sense of direction for the whole international community. What the governments want to do, what societies want to do, because we have to bear in mind that the process of ratification implies that it is not only the executive branch of every country involved, but it really is a process that involves all different areas of society and political groups. So we do have a very clear path. And in as Jose Graziano was saying, the Paris Agreement really puts the stage for a structural transformation of our lives into a society that is low carbon, that is sustainable. In the case of food security and agriculture, climate change really impacts all the different aspects that have to do with food security: production, access, use, prices. All of it is affected by the effects of climate change. So there is a need for us to accelerate action in order to build smart agriculture, in order to have resilient water and energy infrastructure, in order to have innovation in adaptation mechanisms, in innovation, research and development into finding solutions for all these challenges that are posed by climate change to agriculture. We need to address, as the Director General of FAO was saying, we need to address the waste aspect of food. If food waste was a country, it would be the third largest emitter of CO2. So there we can see how important the issue of food waste is in terms of emissions, not only in terms of how many people we could feed if we would not waste that food. And food waste is something that starts with the individual, with its habits, with its everyday activity. So there is really a very good basis in the Paris Agreement that provides for action in this area, Your Excellency. And the important part of the Paris Agreement is that it brings to life all the interlinkages between the different areas of development, because really climate change is an issue that is at the very center of development.
Thank you. Coming back to the Prime Minister, during your speech in the Happiness Dialogue, you talked about the national gross happiness. How is that affecting the agriculture sector in Bhutan? And how do you see this is going to encourage the investment in the sector in Bhutan?
Well, we talk of gross national happiness, Excellency, and the world expects Bhutan to be, all the Bhutanese people to be happy. Fact is, it's more than that. There's a lot of policy initiative that goes into it. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. And like I mentioned, there are various aspects of happiness. It goes without saying that you can't be happy if you're hungry. And food security is fundamental to happiness. I mean, it begins with that. Life begins with food. And you can't be happy if you are not, number one, if you're not fed enough. And number two, if you're not fed right, you have to have the right nutrition. And in this context, food security and agriculture is very important. In Bhutan's context, agriculture is even more important because 64% of our people are reliant on agriculture. Now, remember that in Bhutan, it's just mountains and valleys, and our valleys are very, very narrow. And so we have very few agricultural land that's available. And remember that 72% of our country is forest cover. So we have even fewer by choice. We've limited by choice the amount of land that we use for agriculture. Still, 64% of our people depend on agriculture, and most of our poor, 12% of our population is under the poverty level. They live off agriculture. In fact, most of the world's poor are living off agriculture, and therefore agriculture is very important. Now in Bhutan, the biggest threat to agriculture is climate change. We have a lot of fast-flowing rivers, but they are fed with our glaciers. And climate change is making our glaciers recede. Not just that, we have glacial lakes. And because of climate change, these lakes are breaching the dams, and then they are causing floods. downstream and wreaking havoc among our farms. And so these incidents are on the rise. And we know scientifically that they have a direct link to increased temperature. And while the Paris Agreement, I applaud the Paris Agreement, we are a part of it. 195 countries, Excellency, have come together with one purpose in mind, which is to commit to fighting climate change, reducing global temperatures. The Executive Secretary announced right now that 129 countries have ratified it. And this is a big compliment to UNFCCC and the Executive Secretary in particular, but the world at large. But remember, the commitment of the Paris Agreement is to reduce temperature rise by 2 degrees Celsius from pre-industrial levels. Last year, there were some calculations that it's already increased by 1.2 degrees, 1.5 degrees from pre-industrial levels. Now, obviously, we don't need to panic, but we need to be concerned. And we need to be concerned especially for the poor. And the poor, whether it's in Bhutan or in sub-Saharan Africa, depend on farming and agriculture. And unless we are able to control climate change in Bhutan and in the world, the poor are going to be affected the most.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Espinosa, the stereotype about the climate change is always it's limited to the governments. The role of private sector. It's very crucial. Everyone is talking about private sector. How can we really engage them when it comes to impact of climate change and food security?
Well, the role of private sector is really critical to deliver on the promise and the objectives of the Paris Agreement. In fact, the whole agenda that derives from the Paris Agreement is an agenda that governments alone cannot deliver. It has to do really with an action of society that involves private sector, scientists, civil society, the individual citizens. It's really an agenda that needs to bring together all the different actors. And the private sector has a very specific, important role to make, in part because the necessary investments in order to get to this structural transformation of our societies cannot come only from public funds. It will not come only from public funds. It will require investments, partly also because all those investments need to be sustainable, need to be economically sound. And the good news is that we have so many examples already of sustainable and good business opportunities in the green economy, what we call in general terms the green economy, be it in terms of infrastructure, in terms of transportation, in terms of clean energy production. We are seeing now that renewable sources of energy in this very region is becoming competitive with fossil fuels. So there is really an incredible amount of opportunities that private sector needs to seize, and that many companies are already seizing in all different regions of the world. Private sector has also been important in research and development, in innovation, in building up also new ways and new schemes for business making. So it's absolutely crucial, and therefore I also want to thank you, Minister, for the initiative of making this forum and giving us the opportunity to speak about this very crucial issue to a wider audience and to have an opportunity to reflect on these issues and the real opportunities that there are, the viability, especially in these times of lots of uncertainties. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. Silva, I'm sure you passed through so many best practices when it comes to food security and food diversifications. Best initiatives, best projects. Tell us a few initiatives which really worth to be shared with the leaders.
Well, I would say that are many things that we need to do. The most important is to do it. The most urgent. We need a political commitment to put in practice what we already have. I would say that for adapting to climate change, today we need at least 3 main priorities from the government. One is to rebuild our extension service, because we have so many technology available that the farmers don't use because they don't know. So we need to help them to receive this knowledge that's available, that's in our shelves, in the libraries of the university or in the laboratories. So extension. Second is financial support. Small farmers will not be able to adapt to climate change if they are not funded or have access to finance support to do that. And third, we need research, new research, because innovation is the key for the future. I'll give you an example that you can find here in the Emirates. You know that we now have a problem that with the sea level raising, many delta areas of the rivers are become salted, under salted air, water. And if we don't develop salt-resistant varieties for wheat, for rice, we will lose a big part of our production now. You have here in the Emirates an institute developing this new research. So what we need now is a new, I would say, a new green revolution, a double green revolution. Produce more, respecting the environment, the new change environment.
Thank you, Silva. Prime Minister, you're sitting in front of the leaders here of various governments. What are the 3 top recommendations you're giving them when it comes to food security? Food security, recommendation food security.
Food security. My belief, Excellency, is if you can't help someone, at least don't harm them. My belief is much more, to me, much more important for the poor people, not just in my country, but throughout the world. So 10% of the world's population, about 767 million people, live below the poverty line. That live with $1.90, less than $1.90 a day. That's a lot of people struggling day in and day out. And like I said, most of them are living off not even subsistence agriculture, it's even less than that. Now, collectively, the world has never been this rich before. The world has never had this much technology before. The world has never had this many resources at our disposal. We've never been this interconnected before. If we want to rid the world of poverty, we can. Let's face it, we are not doing enough. We are not doing enough to help the poor. If you don't want to, at least don't make it worse for them. Ideally, we should help our fellow human beings. If we can't help them, if we can't help the 767 million people living under $1.90 a day, don't make it worse for them. And now, we are all making it worse for them. We are making it worse for them by contributing it to climate change. If we can help them, help them. but don't contribute to climate change. As DJ Jose said, don't overconsume, don't waste food. Don't contribute to unnecessarily emitting greenhouse gases, because that contributes to climate change. And climate change makes matters for the poor, who are already desperate, makes it much more difficult. And therefore, my plea is, if I have a single recommendation for governments, multilateral agencies, for private sector, and for the world's citizens at large, take climate change seriously and do our respective bits individually, do our respective bits to reverse the effects of climate change. And for those in leadership position, those in government, those in international leadership positions, we must collectively reverse the effects of climate change.
Espinosa, last words from your side as well to the government leaders.
Well, I would take these very inspiring words from the Prime Minister to say that, in fact, we as an international community, the world as a whole, we have the frameworks, we have the global frameworks, we have the Paris Agreement, we also have the SDGs, we have the knowledge, we have the resources, we have a lot of political will, so it's really about concentrating on how to make it happen individually, in every country, in every community, in every city in the world. And there are lots of very good and inspiring examples. So let's follow them, and from the side of the UNFCCC, we stand ready to work with all of you in making this transformation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Da Silva, last words from you as well.
Well, I think that what the Prime Minister just said is very important. Each of us, we have a role to play on that. Let's at least don't let the things get worse. They already are. But I would like to stress also that this is not for individual action only. We need to get together, because the climate change, it's true that it affects more the poor, but it affects all of us. It will be impossible to survive if we don't get together to face this challenge. This is a challenge for the humanity. When I started discussing this some decades ago, we are talking about the legacy for our grandsons, looking at the impact of climate change in the future. If there is a change in the timing, is that the climate change is already impacting the way we live. So it's not for our grandsons, it's for us. We need to take it seriously, as was said, and we need to get together to do it.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's clear from the discussion today that we all have to work together. See the governments, private sector, academia, international organizations, and NGOs. And we need new ideas, new innovative ways to tackle food security. Please join me in thanking our esteemed panel. Thank you so much for being with us. And I'll rest of the day.